Welcome to the Pit.
Why does the Pit feel more real than anything else on TV right now? Well, I'm gonna tell you why.
And so it begins.
Last year, the Pit exploded onto the scene and immediately became the breakout phenomenon of the year, winning the Emmys for Outstanding Drama Series, Lead Actor in a Drama Series, Supporting Actress in a Drama Series, Guest Actor in a Drama Series, and Casting for a Drama Series. That's an extraordinary feat for a show in its very first season. So what is it about the Pit that draws everyone in? Why is everyone so obsessed with the doctors at the Pittsburgh Trauma Medical Center? What is the magic medicine HBO is pumping directly into our veins every week? Well, I've got a pretty good idea as to why and how the Pit hits.
Want to tell me some more about your ideas?
I thought you'd never ask. Well, we can't talk about the success of the Pit or Noah Wyle without talking about the godfather of the modern medical drama, ER. The show that not only introduced us to the ever-dashing king of the smirk, George Clooney, also the Pit star, Noah Wyle, executive producer John Wells, and creator R. Scott Gamill. So not only is the Pit the latest in a long line of medical procedural dramas, but the two shows share a ton of their DNA. ER walked so the Pit could devastate us emotionally week after week. ER was the show to popularize the fast-paced, medical-driven dramas that put the audience in the middle of the action. Their use of Steadicams, a camera rig that makes handheld camera moves smooth and easier to execute, was revolutionary on television and changed the game, making TV shows more immersive and cinematic. ER has long been seen as the gold standard of medical dramas, perfectly balancing the medical procedural and a character-driven narrative. It's now a classic formula. Hot, brilliant doctors saving lives while struggling to manage their own. And the medical cases were just as interesting, if not more, than whatever the characters were dealing with in their personal lives. Then came Grey's Anatomy, which dialed down the medical procedural element and dialed the relationship drama way up. In ER, it was more important whether Dr. Ross was going to save that kid's life than whether or not he was going to save his relationship with Carol Hathaway. Grey's Anatomy went so far in the other direction, their medical cases actually acted as metaphors for characters' dating lives. Like when a character was dealing with a broken heart, that episode would have a patient arrive with a literal broken heart.
That girl's heart beat for Derek Shepherd.
People weren't tuning into Grey's Anatomy to find out what was going on with the medical cases. They wanted to know what was going on between Grey and McDreamy. The hospital was simply a backdrop for the relationship drama.
You and me? Never gonna happen.
And look, it obviously worked. Grey's Anatomy is the longest running medical drama in American TV history. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Enter the Pit. Hold my beer. The opposite end of the medical procedural spectrum from Grey's Anatomy. In the Pit, the hospital is not just the backdrop, it's the whole world. We're only told enough about the characters' personal lives to learn why they care about the patients. Other than that, all the drama and plot is focused on what is happening in the world of the Pittsburgh Trauma Medical Center. Once we're in the hospital, we never leave grounds. We never hear or see anything happening outside of that tiny universe. And they immerse us in this universe of the highest intensity where nothing else in the world exists. So how does the Pit create this level of immersion? They lean heavily into a style of filmmaking that has only gotten more and more popular. It's called documentary realism, a style of filmmaking where narrative scripted stories are told using documentary techniques, otherwise known as verite filmmaking. It takes the elements of documentary filmmaking that make scenes feel more real and in the moment, increasing our emotional investment in the world and its characters. Comedies and sitcoms like The Office, Parks and Rec, Modern Family, and Abbott Elementary all utilize this format. So how does it work? Well, first thing to notice about the Pit's approach is that they use wider lenses but get in as close as possible to the actors. It makes you feel like you're right in the middle of what's going on. It feels more immersive than, let's say, a perfectly framed close-up shot. And to do that, they film on the Alexa Mini LF camera, swapping between only two lenses the entire show, a 50mm and a 75mm. So we spoke to the Pit cinematographer about her camera strategy.
There was, a few elements that came into this, and the first one was the visual approach of being immersive with them. This wasn't a reason for the mini LF, but the large format was really for feeling the closeness with the actors and really being, really even more immersed with them. I wanted optics that also look, realistic in a way that we're not, it doesn't feel like off, like it would look like the documentary, but also I want it to stay cinematic at the same time. You want it to really feel like you are inside a real AR and you're having a real experience, kind of like a documentary. I think it's extremely cinematic while still being realistic.
The second element of creating the immersive experience is camera movement and placement.
When I started to think about it and visuals, I was thinking it needs to be immersive. You need to be in the middle of it and actually living the shift yourself as an audience. And, I was thinking about film that kind of made you experience that. And something, quite recent was 1917, shot by Roger Deakins. And that was a big inspiration for the show because you are in the trenches with the soldiers and you follow them like you're experiencing it with them. And I was like, the soldiers in the trenches need to be the doctors in the ER. And that's what it needs to feel like.
This is one of the only shows you will ever see that is shot 100% handheld.
We are fully handheld on the show. It just became this whole, dance choreography where we're like, they always wanted the actors to move freely since the beginning, and that was something that was going to happen. So we needed a system that we never stuck on the ground. It's always moving and dancing with the actors. So this is also a part where we didn't want to be on dollies or tripod or anything. We actually don't have tripods, by the way, so on the show, which is the first for me. But it was this idea that the camera will constantly move with the actors, and we wanted this handheld feeling to represent a little bit this documentary aspect. So it's like this immersion where you live the shift through them, and at the same time you kind of this invisible audience documentary filming around,
So while she leaned into that Steadicam style established by ER, like any good artist paying homage to another, she evolved it. And in order to get the fully immersive effect she was after, Steadicam would be too smooth, and traditional handheld would look too jittery. So she found the ZeeGee rig that got it just right.
I'm not sure I know of another tool right now that could give us that extreme feeling of control handheld, but invisible at the same time. But the feeling is there. You still feel like it's handheld. And then at the same time, we can adjust from a character moving. We're just following them, on their face backwards. And suddenly a gurney cross in front of us and you go lower with the camera and you get, can over the gurney to the person. And then boom, you go again. And then you're following an actor that's like smaller, so then the camera needs to be lower. Because we always try to be in their perspective. So the height change was key and the ZeeGee really allowed us to do that.
This full immersion approach brings us into the action of one of the most high-stakes, high-drama, life-or-death environments on the planet, the emergency room. But the reality of this show doesn't stop at the documentary stylings of their visual aesthetic. It goes deeper than that. Sure, we all know it's a scripted show with made-up characters, but that's where the fiction ends, because all of the medical cases in this show are based on real-life cases.
Digital block, 3 cc's of Marcaine.
Pulse 110, BP 135 over 88 in triage.
The jargon isn't just 3 cc's of whatever. It's 100% medically accurate. They've accomplished this by having doctors on the writing staff and by conducting interviews with real ER doctors and nurses.
We never start with the medicine. We always start with the dramatic needs of the character. And then we find the medicine that fits. And what is the medicine that fits? The medicine that fits comes from our well of ideas. And this well is stocked by physician writers who have over 100 years of experience in emergency medicine and trauma, briefings with experts on every topic that we are going to cover, focus groups with real nurses and real doctors from residency training programs and trauma centers in LA. So we just collect masses and masses of stories, and they're all just waiting for the right time to really, really illustrate what's going on dramatically.
The Pitt perfectly toes that line between fiction and reality, and we get to experience true-to-life scenarios where hope and humanity and empathy actually prevail.
What do you need to get some basic empathy back?
However, in the spirit of staying true to reality, when it comes to saving patients, they don't always prevail.
These injuries were really serious.
Why do we want to be immersed in an environment like this? It's because so many of us spend an embarrassing amount of time scrolling on social media, which is a weird place filled with awful anxiety-inducing news juxtaposed with the lie of influencers' perfect lives that make us feel like we're caught between reality and surreality. And then The Pitt comes along and does what other shows attempt to do, but usually fail.
We got skills!
By using documentary techniques and a dedication to realism, they're able to drop us into a high-pressure environment while shutting out the real world, bringing us closer to real suffering while still keeping it at arm's length. So in a surprising way, it brings us into the moment, into the present, where the drama is whittled down to, is this new patient going to live or die? Is the doctor going to be able to handle the devastation if they die?
Sure you can handle that?
And can we, the audience, emotionally handle it?
A wise man once told me that you learn to live with it, learn to accept it, and find balance if you can.
Because sometimes we need a show to remind us at the end of each episode that we've survived thanks to the kindness and brilliance of hot doctors on TV.
You guys do this every day?
If we're lucky.
What's your favorite episode of The Pitt? Let us know in the comments. And if you like this video, like us, subscribe to us, and come back next week for another episode of How It Hits.